The death rate of humpback whales has been unusually high off the east coast of the United States. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has officially declared it to be an unusual mortality even, or a UME. According to CNN, a UME is a stranding that is unexpected, involves a significant die-off of any marine mammal population, and demands immediate response. In total, 41 humpback whales died last year. Ecologists and scientists are still investigating why.
Aside from the decades-old dispute over islands in the Pacific Ocean and the signing of more economic deals, the Russian president and Japanese prime minister focused on North Korea.
We call on all the countries involved in regional issues to refrain from military rhetoric and strive for calm and constructive dialogue. We see as a common task the early resumption of six-party talks.
President Putin and I agreed that Japan and Russia will continue to closely cooperate and appeal to North Korea to fully comply with the UN Security Council resolutions and avoid further provocative actions.
Public agreement, but there are differences in the detail.
I think Abe is trying to bring the message that Russia should be cooperative with the US, that Russia should be open to the idea of new sanctions, and that Russia should be constructive and use its influence over North Korea. I think that's a fairly unrealistic assessment because Russia doesn't really have a lot of influence, but it tries to portray itself as a very influential.
Regardless, it's providing a source of amusement for Russian state television. This is the weatherman showing off the doomsday clock, saying the threat of Armageddon was only closer in 1958. Not even the Cuban Missile Crisis was as bad as it is now. He says these are allegedly bunkers in Pyongyang, and these are, again allegedly, President Trump's personal bunkers in the White House and 2 under golf courses in Florida. Tongue-in-cheek for sure, but the concerns on the North Korean peninsula are real.
The Kremlin maintains that the North Korean issue should be resolved through dialogue, using diplomacy rather than military might to ease tensions. But critics say Russia is not doing enough, that despite public condemnation of North Korea's actions, it needs to do more to put pressure on Pyongyang.
Russia has a 17-kilometer land border with North Korea. North Korean laborers work in Russia's Far East, sending home money from which the North Korean government takes a cut. A ferry service between the two countries is set to start early next month, supposedly bringing workers, Chinese tourists and some goods. And the timing with the increased tension, certainly not ideal. Russia's argument, keeping good relations, can go a long way to de-escalate tensions. This video apparently shows Russian military reinforcements sent to the border with North Korea earlier this month, and the Kremlin declined to comment.
Marine Le Pen was up before dawn to join fishermen in the south of France, once again casting for the working-class vote. With fish stocks in the Mediterranean now at a record low, the whole industry could be facing hard times ahead. Latest government figures show unemployment rising again. Le Pen says it's being created by the European Union. And she took aim again at Emmanuel Macron as being out of touch with real people.
The work he's talking about is the work of traders. It's the work of his friends in the big banks, the big financial powers. You can see he finds it very difficult to speak to working French people. He finds it difficult to get the words out.
The National Front are holding a major rally in the city of Nice here. It was a city won by François Fillon in the first round, but Marine Le Pen hopes to capture it when it comes to the runoff.
I voted for Fillon in the first round. I'm not hiding that. But now it's a big question mark.
Le Pen, c'est pas possible. It's impossible for me to vote for Le Pen. I will be forced to vote for Macron, unfortunately.
Macron spent the afternoon meeting young people in a neighborhood on the outskirts of Paris. The so-called banlieue feature heavily in the media when riots break out, but their sense of alienation and persecution by the establishment has been almost totally ignored during the campaign.
According to a report by Tech News World, this week, 3 leading internet companies have announced initiatives aimed at combating the spread of fake news online. Google revealed that it had tweaked its search processes to deliver high-quality content to the top of its search result pages. And Facebook announced it had begun testing its Related Articles feature, which recommends articles related to the user's topics of interest, hoping to improve quality and transparency. Wikipedia founder James Wales also announced a new online publication that aims to fight fake news by pairing professional journalists with legions of volunteer community contributors. All three initiatives hope to evaluate the effectiveness of informational algorithms and help identify problematic content online, which includes misleading information, hoaxes, and unsupported conspiracy theories.
A German soldier has been arrested for planning a terror attack. Investigators said April 27th they believe he was motivated by a xenophobic background and was possibly planning an attack on refugees and migrants. The soldier was originally arrested in February for stashing a gun in a Vienna airport, but was released by police, who then began an investigation. The 28-year-old lieutenant had been living a double life, falsely registering as a Syrian refugee in 2015 and applying for asylum in 2016. He was apparently granted housing and economic aid payments without speaking any Arabic, while also serving in the army at a joint French and German military base. Authorities also arrested a 24-year-old accomplice who hails from the same hometown near Frankfurt as the soldier, who holds similar anti-foreigner views. Prosecutors believe the two may have been planning an attack in order to frame refugees. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
When a military intelligence ship collided with a freighter carrying livestock, almost 80 Russian Navy sailors were rescued off the coast of Turkey Thursday. Identified as the Liman, the Turkish Coastal Safety Authority said the Russian ship collided with the Togo-flagged Uzarsif H. A former research vessel, the Liman has been retrofitted into a reconnaissance ship by the Russian Navy. According to Turkish shipping agency GAC, the collision was caused due to fog and low visibility, and a tugboat was dispatched along with 3 fast rescue vessels to bring the Russian sailors to safety. In total, 78 were rescued and there were no injuries reported on the freighter.
On Wednesday, a survivalist who had eluded police in northeast Pennsylvania for 7 weeks after killing a state trooper in a 2014 ambush was sentenced to death. 33-year-old Eric Freen was found guilty last week on charges including first-degree murder. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury decided on the death penalty for Freen, who wounded a second trooper in the ambush outside Trooper Barracks in Blooming Grove. Prosecutors claimed that Freen, who had taunted police while hiding out in the woods and scoffed at the search in his journal, wanted to start an anti-government uprising. As the state of Pennsylvania has a moratorium on the death penalty, Freen is likely to end up serving a life sentence on death row.
The Associated Press reports Arkansas prepared to execute its 4th inmate in 8 days Thursday night, wrapping up an accelerated schedule of lethal injections that was set to beat the expiration date of one of the drugs. 38-year-old Kenneth Williams was scheduled to die at 7 p.m. Thursday, but the state was awaiting word from the U.S. Supreme Court on Williams' last appeals before moving forward. His death warrant expires at midnight. Court filings Thursday afternoon followed 2 threads that Arkansas executions this week were so flawed that there's little doubt Williams will suffer as he dies, and that he has an intellectual disability that would make him ineligible for execution. Both the Federal Appeals Court and an Arkansas State Court have rejected Williams' request for stays, but his appeals were pending at the U.S. Supreme Court after a federal judge turned back a last-minute request to stop the execution.
In Davison, Michigan, a family found a colony of brown recluse spiders in their garage. Brown recluse spiders are very dangerous. Their venom causes skin to deteriorate, creating deep open sores. It is extremely unusual for brown recluses to be found in northern climates. They are more prominent in warmer climate states such as Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Howard Russell, an entomologist at Michigan State University Diagnostic Services, stated, "I've been doing this for 30 years. I've had 8 brown recluse out of thousands of spiders submitted, so they're rare."
China has launched a new aircraft carrier, the nation's second and the first built domestically. The unnamed carrier went into the water for the first time on April 25th. in the northeastern port city of Dalian. However, the carrier is not expected to be fully operational until 2020. China's first aircraft carrier, the Liaoning, launched in 2012. It was purchased from Ukraine in 1998 and dates back to the Soviet Union. The new carrier will be powered by conventional fuels, giving it less range than the 10 nuclear-powered carriers of the United States. China has reportedly been working on the carrier since 2013, and it is suspected that it has another one in the works, but there has been no confirmation from Beijing. The launch comes at a time when China has been expanding its presence in the South China Sea, which China claims almost all of. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
Thursday, April 27th, protesters gathered outside of Berkeley University after conservative commentator Ann Coulter's appearance was canceled. Police officials expected there to be violence between Coulter's supporters and protesters, but there wasn't. A Berkeley student named Joseph Pagadara said he was surprised there wasn't violence too. He told a reporter, "Both sides are so intolerant of each other. We are a divided country. We need to listen to each other, but we're each caught in our own bubbles. Regardless of political beliefs, both sides were thankful there was no violence."
Indigenous people clashed with Brazilian police during protests over land disputes. Reuters photographs from April 25th show Indigenous people marching in Brasilia, kicking tear gas canisters fired at them by police. The tribe members shot back with bows and arrows. The protest was peaceful until police blocked a ramp leading to a congressional building. Police said in a statement the tribes weren't complying with an agreement over the boundaries of the protests, saying, quote, they were threatening to invade Congress. Protesters denied that. 4,000 Indigenous people took part in the march. They claim the Brazilian government is trying to roll back protections in the Amazon, which would allow ranchers and farmers to take their land. Indigenous tribes in Brazil often clash with ranchers and farmers who operate near their territory. The protesters say they are planning future protests in front of Congress. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Mila Uni.
Israel reportedly strikes an arms depot near Damascus airport in Syria. Syrian intelligence sources say the military hub is operated by Lebanese Hezbollah. An Israeli military spokesperson declined comment, but the strikes are believed to be targeting the movement of weapons from Iran to Hezbollah via Syria. 5 Israeli missiles reportedly landed southwest of the airport before dawn on Thursday morning, April 27th. Sana news agency reports that warehouses and a fuel tank were damaged. Hezbollah-affiliated media in Lebanon report there were no casualties. Hezbollah backs President Bashar al-Assad's government in Syria's years-long civil war. This is not the first time suspected Israeli missiles have landed in Syria. The BBC reports an Israeli military officer recently said some 100 missiles bound for Hezbollah were destroyed in a raid last month. Israel and Hezbollah engaged in a month-long war in 2006. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
London police arrested a man on suspicion of terrorism near the House of Parliament in Westminster. On April 27th, a man carrying a backpack full of knives was wrestled to the ground by armed police and detained in view of the public. According to The Guardian, a member of Britain's Muslim community tipped off the police with concerns about the suspect's behaviour. The Westminster area has been on increased alert since a terror attack took the lives of 5 people near the House of Parliament on March 22nd. UK Prime Minister Theresa May has praised the police and the intelligence services for their work. Other members of Parliament have taken to social media thanking the police for keeping London safe. The Metropolitan Police have released a statement saying the suspect is in custody and as a result of this there is, quote, no immediate known threat. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Rachel Latham.
The Associated Press reports that voters in New Mexico's capital city have until Tuesday to decide whether to impose a new tax on sugary drinks. The new tax would raise the cost of a can of soda by nearly 25 cents. The citywide tax on distributors would provide Santa Fe an estimated $7.5 million in its first year to expand early childhood education to roughly 1,000 children. If approved, Santa Fe will join U.S. cities from Philadelphia to San Francisco that have adopted soda taxes in recent years.
The Palestinian Authority will stop paying Israel for the electricity that is supplied to the Gaza Strip with the aim to gain back control of Gaza. A branch of the Israeli ministry said it was notified on April 27th that payments would stop immediately. Spokesman for the PA have declined to comment, but the Times of Israel reported Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas threatened to cut cash earlier in the week. According to the Times of Israel, Abbas said leaders of Hamas must either hand over governments of the Gaza Strip or face a funding freeze. Hamas seized control of the Gaza Strip from the PA in 2007. Israel has been charging the PA the equivalent of $11 million a month for the electricity. The United Nations has expressed concerns about the energy situation in Gaza and has called for swift action from Israeli and Palestinian authorities. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Rachel Latham.
Reuters has reported that Pope Francis will fly to Cairo on Friday. His trip comes less than 1 month after church bombings killed 45 people in 2 Egyptian cities as part of a campaign by Islamist militants to rid the Middle East of Christians. Home to some of the faith's earliest churches, the region's Christian communities have been in decline for decades. Francis said on Tuesday he hoped his visit could be a consolation and encouragement to all Christians in the Middle East. He also wants to improve dialogue with Islam.
The head of United States Africa Command has said drought may be driving a recent surge in Somali piracy. Somalia is in the midst of a severe drought and at risk of famine, according to the United Nations, which has said 6.2 million people are in need of assistance. A hijacking off the Somali coast in March was the first since 2012, and there have been several more since. The 5-year gap was attributed to international efforts to increase ship security and naval patrols in the region. General Thomas Waldhauser said the fact that some of the seized ships were carrying food and oil pointed to the hijackings being motivated by drought and famine. Waldhauser made the comments April 23rd during U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis's visit to a military base in Djibouti. Waldhauser said, quote, "We're not ready to say there is a trend there yet, but we'll continue to watch." For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
45% of all jobs could become automated with the technology that exists today. It's estimated that by the early 2030s, 38% of current jobs in the U.S. could be automated, and there's one industry that might be hit particularly hard: retail cashiers. There are already self-checkout stations at lots of major retailers, and the home improvement chain Lowe's is introducing 22 multilingual autonomous robots to some of its stores in Northern California. LinkedIn managing editor Chip Cutter said, "I don't think we've begun to grapple with what that would mean for the economy if these jobs start to really go away in vast numbers." Margaret Breslau is no stranger to political action, and she knows that sustaining momentum is vital. The organizer of the Blacksburg, Virginia March for Science has campaigned for minimum wage earners, Black Lives Matter, and the Occupy movement. She's already worried that the window for action opened by past weekend's Global Science Rally has begun to close. Breslau says the March for Science was different from her previous activism. She and others are following up with projects that don't require people to be on campus. For example, a letter-writing campaign on House of Representatives and Senate bills that would ban federal agencies from using geospatial data to track racial and economic disparities in housing. She's also planning a teach-in for when students return in the fall.
President Donald Trump has stated he will even sabotage Obamacare in order to build a wall between Mexico and the United States. Unfortunately for him, his threat didn't work. He's still funding Obamacare subsidies, and he's even had to postpone wall funding until fall of this year. There have been many theories construed by political experts that Trump is beginning to realize that Congress will not help pay for his infamous wall.
On Thursday, far-right supporters planned rallies to protest their conservative views being silenced after their scheduled presenter Ann Coulter was forced to pull out of a speaking event at the University of California, Berkeley, under concerns about violence erupting. Police have put up barricades on the campus and dispatched officers in riot gear. The conservative social and political commentator said she still might swing by to say hello to her supporters. Police and university officials said they're prepared for possible trouble if the not liberal personality decides to show up.
Vaccines prevent serious infection so effectively that many parents mistakenly believe the diseases are no longer a threat in the United States, a pediatrician warns. Dr. Lauren Snabb says, quote, "Many children have died from diseases that vaccines now prevent. These include whooping cough, measles, and polio. Vaccines save about 42,000 U.S. lives each year and $13.5 billion in direct medical costs. Since the introduction of vaccines in the United States, infant deaths and disabilities from 14 diseases have declined dramatically, according to the CDC.